Okay, we're going to get going. Thanks for joining, everyone. I appreciate it. This is Scott Azzolina. I'm responsible for channel sales for Miria Systems. I'm also responsible for managing our partnership with IBM. We're recording this session today, so for those that aren't able to join, we'll make that available to them. And we do hope this, by the name, is an interactive session. So if you do have questions, we're certainly going to entertain them. I would ask, there is a bit of a pitch, I guess, I need to go through early on. So if you can reserve the questions to the end, and then we can have a little more interaction regarding the potential for future webinars like this, if you feel that it's a good use of time. I'm also joined with our Vice President of Direct Sales, George Thomas. He's on hand as well to answer any questions that you may have. So let's get going. Okay, so our agenda for today would be to cover a brief introduction of Miria Systems. We'll talk a little bit about the business case for accounts payable automation. We'll also talk about a high-level overview of the ActiveOps platform and how that relates to the IBM DBA stack. We'll touch a bit on our current customers as well as our target customers, and we'll talk about what we believe to be our joint opportunity and how we engage. And then finally, as I mentioned, we'll talk about the potential for future webinars like this if you feel it's a good use of your time. Okay. Stuck on a slide here. Bear with me. Hang on, guys. All right, well, forget about the slides. I'll just go into the presentation while that's hopefully getting fixed. So a little bit about Miria. Miria is a 25-year-old company whose software solutions automate financial transactions. We've been an IBM partner since our inception, and we're currently an IBM Gold Business Partner. Our headquarter location is just outside of Philadelphia, and the company actually started out as a consulting services company for complex document management and business process automation. Over time, we evolved to become more of a software and services company. Initially, it was on-premise, and eventually we became a cloud-based SaaS solution provider, as we are today. And we continue to expand our solution set into the payments arena. We view this really as a next logical extension beyond automating invoice processing in what we call ready-to-pay state. We address multiple verticals, but they all have similar characteristics, and that includes those that process a high volume of invoices. They have multiple locations and multiple people processing those invoices. Our customers represent multiple vertical industries and include some of the largest enterprises across the globe. These include companies like Cabela's, they're owned by Bass Pro today, DHL, Vanguard, Comerica, Veritiv, Fifth Third Bank, among many others. If you look at the majority of the enterprises today, they're still, surprisingly so, at least to me, processing invoices manually. There's been a study by Arden Partners that 56% on average enterprises are still processing accounts payable via some manual process. And the 44% on the other side of the coin have some automation, but it's very limited automation typically, and maybe on the back end of the system, not the front, and still contains what's very much still a manual process. So if you envision that scenario where a company may have tens or hundreds of thousands of invoices being processed a month, and they're dealing with multiple vendors, they're dealing with multiple invoice formats, they have different means of transmitting those invoices, and it's all being processed in that organization with multiple locations, multiple people involved in that process, and then add that fact that largely it's a manual process. Well, that level of complexity makes it these organizations and the market really ripe for dramatic efficiency improvements and cost reduction. So another recent study, this one happens to be by Aberdeen, identified the top pressures driving improvements in accounts payable processing. And if you are, I don't know, you're not able to see that screen? Okay. If you're able to see that screen, you can see the lack of visibility into invoices and accounts payable documents, the pressure to reduce costs, and the challenges of managing manual documents top the list. And that just reaffirms a market that I believe is just crying out for automation. Now, given a market which still relies heavily on those manual processes and paper, the business case for automation is simple, but it's compelling. If you take a look here at the industry metrics for the average enterprise, you take a look at each one, if the industry average and compared to what is best in class, there's a lot of room to be gained in efficiencies and cost reduction through automation. But in this example, I just want to highlight one. So if you look at the cost of processing an invoice, the industry average at $19 roughly to process an invoice. And if you add the best-in-class automation processes to that mix, it can get down to $2 or less to process an invoice. So you've got a $17 swing there to improve the efficiencies and cost reduction through automation. So you can do the simple math. If you're in an organization that's processing, let's say, 50,000 invoices a month, and our solution, at that level and that size might cost an organization somewhere around $30,000 a month. If they just improve their costs to process an invoice by just $1, the system really pays for itself. So even modest improvements in the cost to process an invoice easily generates a quick ROI. Now, that's a simplified example that I gave you with some big round numbers, but the reality is our customers generally experience a return on investment within 6 months and with an additional 80% reduction in cost. Now, if you turn to our joint solution, we're again an IBM business partner, and we leverage IBM products. So Miria's Active Ops platform is built on IBM's DBA stack. So we leverage IBM DataCap, FileNet, Business Automation Workflow, and Decision Manager. And we can deploy Active Ops in the cloud, on-premise, or in hybrid environments. But there's a couple of things I think are important to point out here. The first is that as a joint solution, it's important to note that any sale of Miria Active Ops drives licensing of the IBM DBA product. And additionally, regardless of the contract vehicle, it could be embedded software agreement or PVU, IBM reps get sales credit. So now let's turn briefly to the process in terms of the solution, the Active Ops solution, and then the underlying technology which drives it. So if you take a look, the first step in the process, there's high volumes of invoices that are received from multiple vendors, as I mentioned before, locations and formats. They're all scanned and stored in our solution. We call this Active Mailroom, but it's leveraging IBM DataCap and FileNet. These invoices then go through an automated process of validating and matching. So if you think of fields on an invoice being compared to a vendor file or a PO, you can envision the comparisons. For example, do the PO numbers match the invoice numbers? Are the amounts on the PO and the invoice the same? And this process is PO as well as non-PO in scenarios. So as the system goes through this process, ideally the intelligence within the solution will match all the fields and move the invoices to the next step, which would be the approval in the process. But any invoice which doesn't match will be flagged and marked as exceptions, requiring some sort of manual intervention. But regardless of the invoice status, Miria's Active Pay provides that visibility into all invoices, allowing a processor to take the needed action in the process. So, for example, this could be routed for approval, it could be raise a dispute with a vendor, post a transaction to a GL account, which reminds me, we can integrate to just about any ERP and accounting system. And once that invoice is routed for approval and approved, it's now ready to pay status. We also have a solution called Active Bank Pay, and that facilitates the payments of invoices through a single interface where the processor can choose the method of payment, and that could take the form of a wire transfer, check, and a credit card as an example. and then that payment's executed and reconciled with the accounting system. So finally, after all that, all the invoice and related information is archived for audit capabilities and compliance. So you can envision for any organization that has unique and complex workflows and decision points that have to be made, those workflows are being defined and managed where we're leveraging the IBM product, BAW, the Business Automation Workflow, and ODM, the Decision Manager product. So hopefully that gives you an idea at a high level in terms of the process and some of the products that are being used to fulfill that process. If you take a look at our ideal customer profile, we do target several vertical industries. They're all very well aligned with IBM, as you can see. But regardless of the industry, each has very similar characteristics. And I've alluded to some of these before. So the high volume of invoices to be processed, multiple locations where the invoices are processed, and multiple people involved in its processing. And though we have customers processing hundreds of thousands of invoices a month, we do have minimal thresholds you should be aware of. And they typically include, this is more of a guideline, but at least 15 locations, 100 users, and 15,000 invoices per month. Again, digging into our customer base a little bit, again, I mentioned we have customers across all key vertical industries. We do have a well-balanced across those vertical industries, and they align very well with IBM's vertical focus as well. So here we have some highlighted in the FSS area, the industrial distribution area, retail, and some other segments. And these are just the samples of our customers that you can see. But in total, we've generated with them over 10 million transactions through ActiveOps, representing over 22 billion in accounts payable spending. Now I just want to take a moment and dig a little deeper into some specific customer examples, again, representing some of the key IBM verticals. And I've highlighted here one in FSS, distribution, retail, and the industrial segments. So we'll start with Fifth Third Bank. They're a company with 13,500 employees. They operate over 1,100 full banking centers across 10 states. The next is Cabela's. Many of you may be familiar with them. They're a large retailer of outdoor equipment and now a subsidiary of Bass Pro. They generate about $4 billion in annual revenue with 19,000 employees across 82 locations. The next customer may not be a household name, but they're a sizable company in its own right. They're Harcross. They're a chemical manufacturing company. They have 2 manufacturing sites and then 29 distribution locations. And then lastly, Veritiv. They're a large distributor of packaging and print products. They do about $9 billion in revenue a year. And their products, they span 180 locations with roughly 9,000 employees. Now, I've highlighted each across these different verticals, but again, they all have something similar in common. They process a large amount of invoices, as you can see there. And prior to Miria's solution, each was a manual, paper-intensive effort and process. So our combined solution of ActiveOps and IBM's DBA, successfully implemented, by the way, for each client, has really been effective in automating financial transactions. So if you take a look at the customer deployment model as well as the licensing model, we have a mix here, and that does represent our customer base overall as well, where we have some customers that are deployed on-prem as well as in cloud environments. We have customers with perpetual licenses. Typically, you may see them range from anywhere from 400,000 to 800,000 or more. That doesn't include services, by the way. And we also have cloud licenses where, typically customer licenses are ranging anywhere from maybe 8,000 per month on the low end to upwards to 50,000 a month or more on the larger environments. But as we continue to grow our customer base, we do expect the cloud, along with transactional pricing, to be more of the norm. Next, I want to highlight Cargill. It's a joint account that we have as well. They licensed the IBM DBA bundle direct from IBM prior to Miria really getting involved. And they were really investigating at the time a custom AP solution. Miria was eventually brought in by IBM as an alternative to a customized approach. with our prepackaged solution. And after we gave a demo, it really facilitated the process where Cargill recognized that that Miria was the best solution for them. They chose Miria, and then we had a large services component to this as well. So on the services side, even though IBM had already licensed the DBA bundle direct to Cargill, and then later on licensed our ActiveOps solution from us, the services component, we act as a subcontractor to IBM Lab Services into Cargill, and it's significant. So you can see the different services that we provide. It includes setup and migration. There's integration, anything that was required to deploy. There's some customization and training involved as well. But the account overall, particularly from a services perspective, will generate over $1 million in IBM Lab Services revenues. And then from a licensing standpoint, again, you guys did this before we got involved, but just to give you a sense of the size, it was 1,300 IBM DBA PBUs, and then list price, that's over $2 million in list. So I mentioned this because it's an option to include services component with Miria as a subcontractor to IBM Lab Services, and that's just another means of getting sales credit with, as you can see here, some potentially large numbers. So, our joint opportunity, we believe we can really replicate our past successes and significantly grow our mutual business moving forward. Working together with Miria, we believe the IBM DBA sellers have an opportunity to expand your penetration into existing accounts, generate new logos, and drive new revenue. And that's for both DBA licensing as well as related services. We've already engaged with a few IBM DBA folks, folks like Jim Hewitt, Kevin Hayes, among others, maybe some of you on this line as well. And we're working deals into our pipeline as we speak. And we believe our joint solution can better position you within the finance departments on the business side of the house. And this is where we do our selling. So, we know how to speak that language, and we believe it's an opportunity for IBM to engage in new projects and services on that business side. So as I mentioned, although we can support perpetual license model, the transactional model approach, we do believe will open more doors as we move forward. It'll also allow us to close more business faster. Customers like the concept of paying for only what they use and not really being confronted with that large upfront investment to get started. And we can deploy very quickly. Our average deployment takes an average of 12 weeks to implement and go live. So simply, we will make it easy for you to work with us. We can support IBM reps through the entire sales process. Some of you are experiencing this already. We do have an experienced and competent sales team, George certainly being one of those individuals who have been in the business for quite some time. We also have folks that are CPAs on our staff. And again, they know the language of the CFO, they know the language of the controller, which really is a must to be successful in this space. We really don't expect the IBM reps to sell our solutions, but hopefully you'll understand what a good prospect looks like, and we'll work with you to make sure that that understanding is there. We strongly recommend that if you do have a prospect, engage with Miria early in the process. This will ensure our best chances of success, and we can do the heavy lifting where needed. We can also support any joint marketing efforts. This could be an event, a webinar such as this, any campaign that you may want to run, and we can provide customized sales and marketing collateral if you need it. Just let us know, and we can go ahead and provide that, whatever makes sense for your market. If you have any opportunities or questions, I'd be the good contact for you. My contact information is there. View me as a single point of contact here. Again, I know and realize that you're working with some of our folks already. Continue to do that. We all work closely as a team, so I'm very much aware of what's going on already. But moving forward, if you do have an opportunity, view me as that single point of contact. I can quickly mobilize whatever resources we need on Miria's end to ensure that the things work smoothly, you get the responsiveness that you need, and hopefully we can move toward closing more business. That's really all I had for now. I guess we'll open it up to some questions that you may have, and really the floor is open. So you can ask anything, and we'll be happy to answer whatever you have. Nothing, huh? All right. Well, I guess I covered it in good time here. Again, we're also contemplating doing this on a series of webinars. Again, if you feel that it's worthwhile, we're happy to do it. We'll try to make the topics and content relevant to what you're asking. We do have a question. It's from, okay. So do we have any customers in the state and local government or education? The answer is yes, we do. There are several, and George can go into more specifics around it. But we do have several states that we've done work for. But we've been in this business for a long time, so some of them may not have the ActiveOps platform. Some may have resold some IBM product to it, like FileNet and DataCap. There could have been some services and integration work. But we are in a public sector space. We do have customers, and George, I don't know, maybe you can name a few and cite some examples.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we've done some work for like state of Pennsylvania is one at the state level. We have worked in the past with county levels, Allegheny County being one of them. And as Scott mentioned, some of these are core DBA deployments in that space. And we are looking for opportunities with finance automation in the state and local governments. So, we'd like to chat more with the person who asked the question and see how we can expand and go beyond here. Thanks, Scott.
George. He cut out.
Yeah. Okay, hopefully you heard that. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We appreciate it. Again, we'll be reaching out to you to see if there's interest in doing more of these. Hopefully there is. And hopefully you found this worthwhile as well. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.